The monster in the shadows. Who is the Cuca? In the deep corners of Brazilian folklore, there is a name that still sends shivers down the spine of anyone who grew up hearing bedtime stories. Cuca. She is the witch that steals away disobedient children, the creature that prowls through the night, her long nails scratching against windows, her breath heavy with the smell of fear. But who is Cuca really? A myth? A warning? Or something darker? An echo from ancient legends carried across oceans and reshaped by centuries of fear? In Brazil, every child has heard the haunting lullaby, Nana neném, que a Cuca vem pegar. A song meant to soothe, and yet, filled with terror. The Cuca doesn't crawl out of a storybook. She comes from the imagination of mothers and grandmothers, a figure used to teach obedience and respect. But beneath the bedtime threats lies a story that began long before Brazil even existed, a story born from European witchcraft, carried by colonizers, and mixed with indigenous and African mythology to form one of the darkest characters in Brazilian folklore. From Iberian witches to Brazilian nightmares. The name Cuca has ancient roots. It comes from the Portuguese and Spanish word, coca, a monstrous dragon-like being from medieval Europe. During the Middle Ages, villagers in Iberia would hold coca festivals, where effigies of a dragon or witch-like creature were burned to symbolize the victory of good over evil, of St. George over the beast. When Portuguese settlers arrived in Brazil in the 16th century, they brought with them their myths, their religion, and their fears. The European coca transformed in the tropics. Under the humid air of the New World, she shed her dragon form and took on something far more human and far more terrifying. Influenced by African legends of spirit women and indigenous tales of forest demons, the Cuca evolved into a shape-shifting witch. Some described her as an old woman with reptilian skin and yellow eyes that glowed in the dark. Others said she could transform into animals, especially crocodiles or serpents. Over time, the Cuca became the embodiment of everything society feared: disobedience, sin, and the power of women who lived outside control. Like the witches of Salem, she was both feared and misunderstood, a monster created to maintain order, but also to hide the truth about rebellion and independence. The fear that educates. Cuca and childhood. Every society has its monsters. In Europe, there's the boogeyman. In Latin America, El Coco. In Brazil, it's the Cuca. Parents whispered her name to make their children behave. If you don't go to sleep, the Cuca will come for you. The Cuca became a symbol of fear used to teach discipline. But beyond morality, she represents something deeply psychological, the personification of nightmares. In many ways, she is not just a figure from folklore, she is a part of Brazilian identity. The Cuca lives in lullabies, cartoons, and even modern reinterpretations, like the famous version from Cidio do Pica-Pau Amarillo, where she appears as a crocodile-faced witch with wild blonde hair and a hypnotic voice. That version turned her from a faceless terror into a pop culture icon. But the original essence remains, a creature that guards the line between order and chaos, sleep and nightmare. The syncretic birth, indigenous, African, and European roots. The Cuca we know today is a product of Brazil's unique cultural blend. The Europeans brought their coca, a symbol of evil and witchcraft. The Africans contributed the idea of spiritual entities and female spirits who could punish or protect. Indigenous peoples, meanwhile, had their own guardians of the night, beings that could shapeshift, control nature, and discipline those who disrespected the forest. Over centuries, these threads intertwined. The Cuca became a hybrid, part dragon, part woman, part spirit. Her crocodile features may even come from indigenous depictions of forest beasts, or from African symbolism of animals associated with transformation. In this way, the Cuca became not just a monster but a metaphor for Brazil itself, a country born from cultural fusion, haunted by both beauty and darkness. The witch's symbolism: power, fear, and rebellion. At her core, the Cuca is not just a villain. She represents the suppressed power of women, the ancient archetype of the witch, the healer, the wise one, demonized by patriarchy and religion. In colonial Brazil, women who lived alone, practiced herbal medicine, or defied social norms were often accused of witchcraft. The Cuca, then, became a reflection of these fears, a warning against female independence. But in modern interpretations, many have begun to reclaim her image. The Cuca can be seen not as a child stealer, but as a guardian of the natural order, a punisher of cruelty, a protector of balance. Her magic, once feared, is now seen as the voice of nature itself. The legend lives on. Centuries have passed, but the Cuca endures. She still appears in songs, stories, and nightmares. In every generation, she transforms, from medieval dragon to colonial witch, from nightmare to icon. She is a mirror reflecting society's fears, of the dark, of disobedience, of power that cannot be controlled. And yet, within that darkness lies truth. The Cuca reminds us that every myth hides a message, every monster hides a mirror. When the night is quiet and the wind whispers through the trees, somewhere in Brazil, the Cuca still walks, not as a creature of pure evil, but as a guardian of memory, carrying centuries of human imagination through the shadows.